Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Farzana Ali, who's here to share with us her new book, Sound Healing: How to Use Sound to Beat Stress and Anxiety. So did you know that there's science that backs how sound healing can impact your health in a positive way? Well, today, Farzana Ali is going to share with us just that. So, Farzana Ali is known as the sound therapist and as a sound practitioner. She also leverages a 17-year career as a former lifestyle and wellness journalist, having worked for both glossy magazines and national newspapers, during which she tried out and tested all types of meditation and mindfulness activities and interviewed leading experts across the well-being field. So let's welcome to the show, Farzana Ali.
Thank you so much for having me.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. What inspired you to write this?
Well, I guess the popularity of sound has meant that a lot of new people are being exposed to it constantly, and I kept finding that when new clients would come to a session or a class, they'd be asking me the same questions. There was an eagerness to know exactly how it's working. There was an eagerness to discuss their experiences and, how they found the sound or how it was moving within them. And so I was getting a lot of this same kind of questions come up, and I thought, you know what, there's definitely an area here where I feel like people are seeking answers, and hopefully I can provide that for them.
Well, I like how you start off the book asking a couple questions.
Mhm.
And I think one question was really very interesting is what is sound? I think a lot of people think they know that, but
Mm.
they may not really have the idea of what that really encompasses.
Mhm. Mhm. No, absolutely. And I think also sometimes when you're working in this kind of therapeutic space, understanding and having a real understanding of what the modality is and how it can help you kind of reinforces the fact that it is helping you. And I think that's what I kind of hope to do with the book, where it's just delving into the layers of how sound is working with you, how the fact that we are all vibrations and we do respond so well, so intrinsically with this particular modality.
I think a lot of times people forget that sound is energy too.
Yes, of course. And I think in the last couple of years, where we've been talking more about manifestation, about the energy that we give out there, the energy that we surround ourselves with, I think people are, really kind of starting to tap into their awareness of energy and how it relates to their day to day lives. And I think, in that way, sound is such a, I guess, universal thread that kind of binds all of that together.
So, is there emotional impact of sound?
Absolutely. So, one of the things I find that people are sometimes surprised about is how emotive sound is. And, sometimes you're met with a bit of skepticism when you say this to someone experiencing sound healing for the first time. And then you break it down for them and you ask them, do they put on a favorite track before they go for a run? Do they put on music and it has, kind of moves them in a film scene? So we already do use music in this way and sound in this way to change our emotional state. It's just that we don't recognize it in this therapeutic, I guess, therapeutic umbrella as such. And so what we're doing with sound rather as opposed to music is that we're deconstructing the music so you can't get quite caught up with the lyrics, or you're not getting swept up by a particular melody. So we're deconstructing it, and so the sound is able to take you deeper into your emotional processing, deeper into those shifts that you might want to encourage and kind of see occur.
I know there is a lot of talk around white noise and there's pink noise and brown noise. So, when we talk about white noise, what is that and why is it so helpful?
So white noise is a broad umbrella sound, I guess, where it contains all the frequencies that are perceptive to the human ear, and they're all played at a certain, at the same same kind of volume. So what it does, it creates like an audio camouflage. So it's really easy for your brain to kind of switch off and not be distracted. Is why we use white noise to help put babies to sleep, because then they're not picking up on any other sounds. It kind of allows your brain to, I guess, space out, and that can take you to a place of, if you're trying to concentrate, or if you're trying to find, focus, or you're just cutting out kind of environmental noise. It's really good for that.
I know I use, I believe it's the brown sound sometimes when I'm having a hard time going to sleep, and that
That's
seems to
my
help.
favorite. Yeah. Do you know what? I love that you've said that, because brown noise is my personal favorite as well. It's a much deeper rumbling sound. The higher octaves are kind of quieter, and so it's much more of a rumbling sound. I find it very, very deeply relaxing.
So do people self-medicate with sound?
Intrinsically, as human beings, we have been self-medicating with sounds since we began to walk. We do this quite naturally, and our bodies respond to therapeutic sound. It's just that we don't use it in this modern, we don't kind of recognize it in this modern framework of therapy. So, being by the ocean is relaxing. We all know that. And it's a universally relaxing experience for every single human. Same as if you're walking in the woods and you hear the gentle rustle of the leaves of the trees, it is a universally pleasing sound. And those sounds tell us that we're safe. So, what happens is, when we're feeling safe in those environments, our um, breath rate slows down, our heart rate slows down, and so we we relax. We activate our parasympathetic nervous system. Um, so that's where we do use it to self-soothe. It's just that we don't recognize it in a that kind of modern context. But we're very receptive to sound as human beings.
So what is some of the history of sound healing? And actually, before we go there, why don't we talk about what sound healing is so people have an understanding of what that looks like?
Yeah. So sound healing, as I describe in the book, it's a modality which uses sound, frequency, and vibration to induce a much more relaxed and restful state of being. So we're using sound to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite of the fight or flight, part of the nervous system that we're in when we're stressed out, or we're very anxious, or we're feeling like, quite a lot of overwhelm.
So can you share some of the history of sound healing with us? Because I know you go into that in your book, and I found that
Mm.
so fascinating.
So as mentioned, before, with sound, we as a species, I guess, resonate so deeply with it that across the globe, all of our ancestors use sound in some kind of therapeutic way. A lot of this has been lost, and it's being rediscovered by specialist archaeologists. But one thing I mentioned in the book, for example, is that Stonehenge, which is obviously a very important monument in England, where I'm from, is that scientists in recent years have discovered that the placement of the stones actually create a speaker system. So if you're singing or playing an instrument at one particular part, then the sound travels. The way that it bounces across the structure, it travels, and it would have been used to lull, the recipients of any ceremony that was taking place. It would lull them into a trance-like state. There's obviously examples as well of sound healing, chambers in pyramids, from Egypt to kind of the ancient Americas. We've got the Aboriginal population of Australia. The kind of instruments they use have been shown to again induce a very restful, relaxed state where your brain waves slow down and you kind of can enter that trance state that is so beneficial for the brain.
I was really enjoying the fact that you talked about how Malta had the Oracle Chamber, and I had never heard of that, and I thought
Yeah.
that was such an interesting piece of history.
Well, like I say, it's across the globe. We've got these examples of early humans using and humans across the millennia actually using sound and using acoustics in this way. It's just we've kind of lost some of that connection to sound in that modern world, in the modern world that we're in at the moment.
So, why do you think that sound and because I myself, I went to a sound bath for New Year's Eve, a few years
Amazing.
back, and I enjoyed it.
Amazing.
I loved it. But why do you think sound is making this, like, resurgence that people are really paying attention to it?
I think there's a few factors. I think the last couple of years we've gone through such a monumental global shift, and people are prioritizing their mental well-being in a way that I guess, as someone who's been in wellness for nearly 20 years, I haven't seen previously, if I'm really honest. Secondly, I think for most of us, especially, I've come from a very corporate world when most of us when we're stressed and we're anxious, the idea of having to undertake another thing, to add another thing to your to-do list, to kind of embark on learning or you know actively getting yourself out of that feeling of stress and anxiety can be quite overwhelming. And it's another thing to add to the very long to-do list that most of us have. I think the beauty with sound healing is that it's a very passive activity. It's a very passive modality. All you have to do, say, if you're coming in for a session, as you will know from your New Year's Eve sound bath, is you enter the space and you lie down. And that's as the extent of your hard work, really. The practitioner is the one who kind of then takes over. The space is held for you. The way they play and use the instruments, your brain can't help through a process that we call sympathetic resonance. Your brain can't help but match up to sync up to these slower sound waves that then slow down your brain waves. And so I think that's one of the biggest draws. You don't have to kind of it's a very low effort activity, and I think in a world that's constantly demanding more from us, it's really nice actually to have someone else hold the space and someone else do the hard work, but we benefit.
I was so impressed by your background, by the way.
Thank
I
you.
I mean, you come at this at a very unique perspective. A physician, scientist, biomedical engineer, public health researcher. I mean, as we look at these titles that explain the work that you do, it also goes into this book, and you can see how it's all linked together because one of the things that you talk about is the mind body link. And I
Mm.
found that so fascinating because a lot of times when we hear about sound healing, it doesn't come from a place of science.
Yes, that is very, very, very correct. And, I think a lot of people sometimes think that I might not like what, we would consider, I don't know if you use this term necessarily across the pond, but, things can be explained in a very woo or woo woo kind of way. Looking at things is actually just oftentimes just science that hasn't been explained. Now, with my background, I know that for a lot of the clients that I see, the science is actually very important and they want it explained in a way that they'll, if someone is kind of coming at them and saying, "Oh, I'm not sure I believe this," they can be like, "Actually, here are the studies, here's what the doctors are saying, here's what um the research that's been conducted is saying. And I think that was really important for me as a practitioner when I was studying, even to really understand how our brain is working, our ear works, how our body works, how our nervous system is connected, what the vagus nerve is doing, and how all of, it all kind of interacts with each other. And I think that's what I've tried to kind of make sure I have that message within the book. Um, and hopefully that comes across in an accessible way where it's not too complicated. But yeah, I think for me personally, it was really important to make sure there was a strong scientific foundation to everything I was talking about. But like I say, it doesn't mean that I don't believe in more naturalistic or holistic kind of ways of explaining things, and oftentimes things that we don't yet have the understanding for, we can kind of almost say that it's all very alternative, but sometimes science just needs to catch up.
I would agree with that. It's interesting what they do call woo woo, or just woo kind
Mm,
of information has now become very mainstream. We talk about mindfulness and all
yes,
the research done behind that and
absolutely.
meditation.
Mm.
So why not sound healing too?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you do have someone strapped up to a monitor, you can, measure their heart rate. You can measure, their brain waves. So we know that it works. And I guess sometimes when, like I said, this is such an ancient practice, really at its essence, we sometimes forget what our ancestors did and how they kind of coped and had, enhanced their well-being. And then we can become dismissive of it the more kind of technologically advanced we get. And now I feel like it's almost like a reclaiming. It's going back to that innate knowledge that we had and understanding, oh yeah, I do see how that works actually. And yes, when I do go on holiday and by a beach, I do feel calm, and not just because I'm on holiday, but because the sound of the ocean lapping at the shore is actually shown to be scientifically pleasant for us, scientifically relaxing. Recent studies have shown that listening to birdsong, we can actively measure how restful that is for us. And so, maybe, yeah, 10, 15, even 30, 40 years ago, if you'd said something like that, people would think you're part of a hippie community, that you're just out in the woods listening to the birds. But actually, science is showing that those things are indeed true.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in your book, there's a quote here. It says, "To change the way you're thinking, you have to change the way you're feeling. You can't just talk or think your way out of stress and trauma." Why is that?
Absolutely. So part of, sometimes Western psychotherapy, Western therapy in general, we can have a habit of intellectualizing everything and over discussing and over kind of creating an intellectual kind of argument for something. And what happens is sometimes we need to feel our way through what it is that we need to process. And that's where the change happens, because, someone could tell you that, you're not stressed. And you could tell yourself that, oh, yeah, no, okay, fine, I'm not stressed. But we need the evidence to kind of back this up. And if your heart rate is elevated, if you know, your breath is shallow, your brain is not going to listen to the words that you're physically saying, because your body is giving it all these cues and all this information to say, nah, this is wrong. You are actually in danger. So we do have to feel it. We do have to have a much more, I say in the book, a much more bottom up approach where we kind of address the physical, we address the body before we really address the mind. Sometimes over kind of analyzing something can actually disconnect us from the emotion that we actually just need to feel. I would also probably add and not everyone may agree with this, but I would also add that sometimes if we can, we can villainize emotions or certain feelings, and we can think things like anger are bad and that we should never feel angry. But that's actually not true at all. Anger is a very important messenger. You know, feelings of anxiety, they are messengers. They are telling us that something needs to change. They are warning signs, they are signals to say something is out of balance in your life and you need to look at this before I make you sick physically, and I think that's something that we really should give more importance to.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Farzana Ali in regards to her new book, Sound Healing: How to Use Sound to Beat Stress and Anxiety. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors. Lindsay Roy's new book, The Gift of Perspective, is a must-read. Lindsay's unique life stories of surviving and thriving after two major life challenges is a wonderful companion to start your new year. It's a great guidebook for anyone facing a challenge, big or small, in business or in life. Lindsay's own stories and the anecdotes of those she met along the way help illuminate real ideas in real circumstances, drawing out reflections and actionable takeaways for all. Full of faith, grit, and humor, this book has the power to change how you see things. The Gift of Perspective is available at Amazon, or visit Lindsay's website at lindsayroy.com. I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest Farzana Ali in regards to her new book, Sound Healing: How to Use Sound to Beat Stress and Anxiety. So when we talk about healing our mind, what does that look like? What does that entail?
So healing the mind can be addressed and looked at in several different ways. The way we talk to ourselves, the information that we give ourselves, the timings that we take in information. I love having a cell phone, a mobile phone, but how many of us are guilty of waking up and taking quite hefty news first thing in the morning? And so looking at that is just kind of understanding that the way we process information, the information that we absorb, to do it in a much more mindful way, to allow yourself time to process things.
Earlier, we talked about a sound bath, and I'd love for you to explain for our listeners who haven't experienced that what a sound bath is.
Yeah, so a sound bath is the name that we give a session that involves any type of sound healing or sound therapy. And, sound healing is obviously what I mentioned before. It's the modality where we're using sound and frequency vibrations to take that nervous system into a place of calm. So a sound bath typically, involves you coming into a space where you lie down, you get comfortable. You can be either lying on yoga mats or cushions on the floor, or you can be in a one-to-one setting. You can be on a therapy bed, and that's kind of your active participation. That's where that ends. We usually with clients, you kind of I tuck people into blankets, make sure they're very, very comfortable, and then the practitioner will play whatever instrument that they have access to or they're doing that day, and they're using that to create and these are therapeutic grade instruments, I should add. They're using that to kind of take you on this sonic journey of deep rest.
And usually when we talk about sound baths, why is that a thing that someone would consider doing?
So I see with clients coming in for I see clients coming in for with for a variety of reasons. For most people, it's because they've been feeling a bit run down, a bit stressed out. They're feeling quite a lot of overwhelm at work or in their personal life. And so they're looking for a bit more of a sanctuary where they can switch off and rest. I don't know about you, but for a lot of us, sometimes relaxing at home can be difficult. I know personally, before I became a sound therapist and started on this journey, I found it really hard to meditate when I'm at home and I'd try and meditate. I'd be thinking, well, I'll just put the laundry in because then at least I'll be meditating and productive. Or I'll just go and pop the dishwasher on. There's all these things and intrusive thoughts. Whereas when you go to a space, it's easier for you to switch off, and you know that you're there solely for that reason. But that said, I have clients who have come in because they're going through really big changes in their life. So they're either leaving a job or starting a new job. A relationship has ended. They've had some kind of grief or bereavement, or they're going through, I see clients who are going through chemotherapy and they're looking for a space where they can just unwind and help remove some of that emotional baggage that they might be carrying, from whatever experience they're going through. I also have clients who, these people are easier to spot when their partner's very much into this and they've kind of been, you know, and I wouldn't say it's unfair even to say they've been kind of dragged along to experience it. And then once they're there, their eyes are open to this and they're so shocked and moved by their experience that then they come back and they bring other friends with them. So, it can be for a whole host of reasons. Sometimes people just come in because they want to switch off and they like the feeling that you get after a sound bath, which is, you feel mentally refreshed, you feel rested. It's a really lovely and again a really beautiful passive way to just leave your thoughts at the door and have some time for yourself.
So, what if someone falls asleep? Do they still get the benefits of a sound bath?
Yes, they do. They do. Honestly, if I could tell you the number of times people will apologize for falling asleep, or they'll be worried if they've been snoring or whatnot. But when you're in in-person session, you're not just, you know, hearing the vibrations, you're not just hearing the sound, but those vibrations are going through you as well. So you are definitely receiving the benefits in a much more somatic, physical way. Of course, you might be missing out on the introspective changes that happen, or the creativity sometimes that people experience after a sound bath. So you might not be feeling that, but as I mentioned in the book, sleep is paramount to good health. It is absolutely paramount. And so, if in that moment your body, your physical need of sleep is the most overriding need that you have, then that's okay. Fall asleep. I really don't mind if people fall asleep in a session because you can't be mentally refreshed and you can't be emotionally healthy unless you're adequately physically rested, and that comes from sleep. So it's okay to fall asleep. Don't feel guilty for it. And yes, in a real life situation where you're present, having the sound bath, and not just a digital recording or something, then you are feeling those vibrations. They're going through you on a cellular level.
So, how do we heal through sound? How does that work?
So there's many different kind of ways. As I mentioned, the emotional processing that can happen when your brain is in a theta dominant state. So processing our emotions, filing things away. That happens. Feeling mentally refreshed. This happens because when we're in that deeply relaxed state, when we're in a theta dominant brainwave state, the mineral levels in our brain reset. They recalibrate. So again, that's a very physical, tangible benefit that's happening to you. Um, in terms of slowing down your breath rate and your heart rate, your body's got time to kind of unwind, to relax. Again, another very physical, kind of tangible thing. In terms of again, going back to that kind of mental and emotional processing, when we are rested, and I mean truly rested, it is easier for us to view our lives and view our situations with more clarity. So clarity is, I believe, something that we don't talk about enough when it comes to sound healing. And clarity is it gives us the answers. So, sometimes when we're rested, we can actually see our way out of a situation that can be causing the anxiety or the stress that we don't want in our lives, which it's very easy to miss. The mist of frustration or anger or desperation is clouding our view. So that's definitely a big draw.
How does sound healing impact our brain and our brain activity?
So at the moment, for example, we're speaking, we're concentrating, you're thinking about your questions, I'm thinking about my answers. We're engaged in a beta dominant brainwave state. So that's, the day to day when we're thinking, when we're doing. Too much time spent in a beta dominant brainwave state is what causes us to feel stressed and anxious. When our brain waves slow down and we're in slower dominant brainwave states, that's when we feel relaxed. That's when we process things. So, an alpha dominant state, is when we are awake and alert, but it's kind of we're not concentrating. So it's like when if you're taking a bath, for example, you're awake and you have enough awareness not to kind of like slip into the bath water or anything like that. So you are awake and you're aware, but you're kind of almost on autopilot. Your brain is kind of semi switched off, you could say. From there, we have another brainwave state called theta. So theta is the one I was just speaking about, and theta dominance is when we experience this naturally when we're in REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. That's when dreams happen, when we're in that trance state. We're not in deep sleep, but we're definitely not awake, and we're not concentrating. We're not doing anything, and that's the time when the brain processes, experiences, emotions, and allows our brain to kind of reset the mineral levels. So that's a really good state to be in. Our brains naturally through a day should go through ups and downs in these different brain waves. We shouldn't be spending too much time in a beta dominant state. However, the lifestyles that we have currently and the life that most of us lead is that we're constantly switched on. We are always concentrating. Years ago, if you were going from meeting to meeting, you might, and you were in, I don't know, on a bus or, for us in London, on a tube on the underground, you might kind of, be allow your thoughts to wander. You might read a poster. You might, if you're on the bus, you might look out the window. When we do those things, our brain waves slow down. We kind of, allow ourselves to have the brain to engage in a more restful state. But we don't have that anymore. How many of us, when we're going from a meeting to another meeting, we're checking emails, we're replying back to texts, we're wondering, what we're having for dinner, we're ordering things, we're, doing errands. So we're constantly in this heightened state of being switched on all the time. And that's where a lot of this stress and anxiety kind of manifests because we don't give ourselves adequate time to rest. What the instruments that we use in sound healing do is that because the sound waves that are produced from these instruments are slower, they slow down your brain waves. And the process is called entrainment or sympathetic resonance. So it's when, um, something kind of syncs up to something else. And that's essentially what's happening to your brain. Your brain is syncing up to the slower brain waves that are, the slower waves that are being produced by the instruments. So the slower sound waves slow down your brain waves. And that's where we kind of, slip into those slower, more relaxed brainwave states.
So when we are experiencing sound healing, does that make us more resilient?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, one of the things I speak about again in the book is that the idea that resilience means that you're just supposed to, that resilience means the ability to put up with an incredible amount of hurt or trauma or anguish, and that's not really true. Resilience is how quickly we can bounce back from something. And sound healing is a really excellent way to help increase our resistance. And it does this by changing how we view things. And what I mean by that is that sound healing is a great tool to increase our resonance, how positively we see the world. And this happens because the more time we spend in deep rest, the more clarity we have over our lives, the more positive things start to appear. Let's take a very broad example. If you've got a problem with a colleague at work, for example, and you come to sound baths or you do any type of really deep meditation work where you allow yourself time to really think about how you can address something or through something, the answers are more likely to come when you're rested. So it gives you tools to then deal with the situation that may be causing you the stress or anxiety, such as, speaking to that colleague or working out a way to speak to that colleague. So it gives you resolution, but you're able to see things in a much clearer way. You can understand that actually this colleague, maybe they're not being difficult because they hate me, but actually maybe they're going through something and they're projecting. And so whatever situation you might be having at work actually has nothing to do with you or your ability. Does that make sense? So it kind of helps you reframe things. And when you're reframing things, you can, see things in a much more positive light. The more positive we are about our lives, the more positive our thoughts are, the more positive our emotions are, the more positive our outlook on life is. And that is a great tool to help us build our resilience.
I really like how in your book you talk about how when you do sound baths with your clients, you have them embrace their thoughts that arise. And I thought that
Yes.
that was so powerful because a lot of times I think we've been trained to go, "Oh, okay, those are bad thoughts. I'm going to have to stuff those away somewhere."
Yeah. So my belief is there are no bad thoughts. There are, every thought that you have, everything that comes up is, again, it's vital information. It's coming up for a reason. So when a thought comes up in a sound bath, and it can be, and I say this to clients all the time, it can be something that may seem really insignificant. And you might be lying there thinking, I'm supposed to be relaxing. Why am I thinking about, you know, did I defrost the chicken before I left this morning? It can be something really, has no real kind of importance. But if you get stuck in a battle of trying to control your thoughts, you're putting yourself back into a very engaged thinking brainwave state. Whereas if you allow your thoughts to come and go and allow whatever is coming into your head, No matter how insignificant it may seem initially, that thought could lead you to other thoughts, which lead you to, another thought, which could actually be very crucial in you helping you understand what it is that's the source of any anxiety or the thoughts of any kind of underlying stress that you're experiencing. And so, yeah, absolutely go with your thoughts, allow them to come from there. You're in a flow state, and when we're in a flow state, it's easier for us to allow our brains to switch off.
So when we're thinking about all these things, is that our ego trying to take over?
No, no, absolutely not. I don't think of it in that way at all. It can be, like I say, if you're, whatever thoughts come up, they're messengers. So if you're, if you're lying there in a sound bath and you're thinking about an earlier interaction, and say it's someone in the coffee shop and they've pushed past you and that's made you really angry, and you're thinking about that, and you're thinking, I should have said something, or I should have been more, you know stood my ground a bit more, or that may seem like, on the surface, may seem like a very insignificant thing. But if you're feeling really angry about it in a session, or it's kind of consuming your session, then it could be that you have something that, a deeper need that you need to process about your boundaries. That actually, from there, you could be like, oh, it reminds me of the time that my friend suggested this, and I just kind of went along with it, and I've swept along, and actually I should have stood my ground more. And so it could be that could be your real that could be the real issue, the underlying issue that's actually made you very cross in the first place. So, thinking about the coffee shop interaction, for example, in that moment may seem like, oh God, it's a waste of time. I should be Zen. I should be thinking about flowers and trees, and not this, this person who pushed past me and made me very, very angry. But actually, like I say, if you go with your thoughts, you may then uncover a link, and it may help you resolve something else that you're actually trying to address, which could be, for instance, a perceived lack of your personal boundaries. Now, if you allow your thoughts to go, and say, for example, this is the core of your issue that's making you angry, that's when I was talking about the clarity, that's the clarity. And then when you can deal with that underlying issue, you'll find moving forward, this is when an increase of resonance happens. You'll find moving forward that if that situation happens again where someone pushes past you or is aggressive in a coffee shop, it will just not bother you. It just won't bother you. It will not matter. It will not bother you, because you'll be able to understand that that interaction actually doesn't have anything to do with you. And you can be like, okay, if you're that desperate for your coffee, please come in front of me. It's just allowing yourself to go with your thoughts in the same way that emotions are not negative. They are important messengers.
It sounds like it offers us the ability to have more compassion and understanding for other people.
Absolutely. But, I think it's important to remember that compassion and understanding first has to begin with yourself. And so if you know, through these type of activities, through these type of modalities, through this, undertaking of deep rest, have more compassion for yourself, understand yourself better, it will, of course, then help you understand those around you better as well.
So, can sound healing help us process grief and loss?
Absolutely, it can. Absolutely. I think it's important to understand, firstly, that, grief is supposed to be felt. That's not, it's not something that we should, brush under the rug. It's not something that we should shy away from. Grief is, there's this that, that beautiful kind of quote where, grief is all that unexpressed love that you still have. And it's okay to feel grief. It's okay to be sad. We are supposed to be sad. If we experience a bereavement, in whichever way that is, it could be the loss of a relationship, the loss of a home, the loss of, you know, a parent, a sibling, a grandparent, whatever it is, we're meant to experience those things. We're meant to process, we're meant to feel our way through it to process it. And, sound is a beautiful container for that. I think a lot of the issues we have in modern society, I mean, especially here, maybe in England, is that stiff upper lip where it's just, you just got to keep going. But actually, that's a very unhealthy way to be. And sound just gives you a really beautiful container to allow you to feel how you're feeling, and it's okay to it gives you the opportunity to understand that it's okay to feel terrible at times. If you're going through a bereavement and you feel desperately sad, it's because you're meant to feel desperately sad, and that's not a bad thing.
What are some of the other benefits? I know we've talked about quite a few, but what are some of the other benefits of sound healing?
So one thing I think never gets spoken about, because like you say, we've addressed some of the big ones here already, but is community, and building community and allowing yourself, when you go to these type of healing places and healing practices, it introduces you to like-minded people, and it introduces you to people who are on a path of healing or who are on a path of more compassion, more understanding. And it's a really great place to meet new people and widen your circle to include more people who have that type of awareness.
What would you like readers and our listeners to take away from your book?
Um, I guess my main takeaway is that it is okay to rest, that you have permission to rest. You have permission to live a life, that is going at the pace that is comfortable for you, that it's okay to slow down when you need to slow down. It's okay to not want to be going at a crazy, fast, insane speed. Um, if you don't want to do that, and actually it's not sustainable. So it's removing, the guilt of trying to have it all and trying to do too much. And rest is something that we all desperately need and we benefit from so much. And I guess that you've got permission. You have permission to rest. I say this in every single class. So I guess maybe that's the biggest takeaway, that you have the permission to slow down.
Where can our listeners learn more about the work that you do and be part of your community?
So if they're on social media, then connecting with me there. Share sound clips on there quite a lot. I share any research that's coming out. And sometimes it's just sharing just fun community things that we're all doing. So yeah, if they're on kind of Instagram, then the sound therapist is my handle. They can reach out to me through messages there. I mean, I would love to hear from people about how sound has impacted their lives, for sure.
And do you have a website?
Yes, I have a website. It's thesoundtherapist.com. So again, they can reach out that way as well.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
No, thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's such a pleasure and such an honor. And I hope that this message and this chat resonates with your listeners.
Well, thank you, Farzana. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Sound Healing: How to Use Sound to Beat Stress and Anxiety. Sound Healing's available to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everywhere books are sold, and you can also purchase this book directly from the publisher at Watkins Publishing. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.